and yeah, it's par for the course. I don't know if there's any penalties for, you know, or things. Are there actions that Trump can take if he is in fact trying to operate a shadow
Well,
government? Are there actions he can take that would cross the line into illegal?
Yes.
Well, I really want to have a chat with Latin, but Linda's dying to speak, so let Linda say what she has to do, and then let's go to Latin.
Yes, it is illegal. It's called the Logan Act. Trump is in violation of the Logan Act.
Go get him, Linda.
Yes. And that needs to be called out, and we need to be pressing our reps in order to press violation of the Logan Act. A former president cannot be conducting international relations with foreign governments going around the present administration. It's illegal. It has been for a long, long time. Okay, that's it.
Linda, you and Cece need to get together on this one, I would say. Go ladies.
Good idea.
Now then, Latin. Oh, we've had a little chat in the background, and we've come to some conclusions. So please go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Mockers and Will. Mockers, you and I were just discussing quickly there about a post from Telegram from kind of a dissident Russian account, and apparently you said you read it earlier, right?
Yeah, just to go through the points of it, really, that he's saying that pilots are now refusing to fly on missions. He confirms there is more and more tragic news. And he says we're not talking about one or two aircraft. And what's most tragic is, of course, as we've mentioned, the loss of fighter pilots being irretrievably lost. And the fact command are trying to hush it all up. And they don't have a clue as to how it's happening.
And there are rumors there of pilots actually refusing to fly under these conditions, which that is actually consistent with what the Ukrainians are claiming has been happening since yesterday. The commander of the Ukrainian Air Force has shared a few images that appeared to be some kind of a radar image of showing an almost total lack of aerial targets in whatever that seemed to be kind of eastern Ukraine. That probably is not sustainable, but it gives an indication that they are disrupting Russian operations, and that there's probably something going on the other side. This is becoming a real area of debate on social media, and even some pro-Ukraine voices are openly questioning the veracity of these claims. Okay, if it's okay, Mockers, I want to just read something, because this really gelled this morning on another back channel. I wrote something to some friends, and is it okay if I just read it? It's not that long.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I just kind of crystallized some of what I've been, after reading that Telegram report, I was kind of just putting together these thoughts that had been building over the last couple of weeks. So I wrote to my friends that pro-Ukraine voices are questioning the claims of aerial kills. It's nonsense. Everyone expects real-time accurate data. It doesn't work that way, even in 2024. Clearly, something is happening. You cannot throw aircraft armed with a relatively primitive weapon with limited standoff range into a robust and developing Ukrainian integrated air defense system and not expect that losses will rise. Many have fallen for the inflated perception of the Russian Air Force. The glide bombs are deadly weapons, no question, and the Su-34 a very capable platform. But they are relying on an improvised weapon that was not properly developed, likely affects the flight characteristics and radar cross-section of the aircraft that has to release it from at least medium altitude. My guess is 15 to 20,000 feet, and with a standoff range of maybe 30 to 40 kilometers at best, not enough against an integrated air defense system that includes excellent radar, probably NATO assets for targeting, and long-range surface-to-air missiles. And they, the Russians, are hopeless at suppression of enemy air defense, notwithstanding endless videos of Su-35s with anti-radiation weapons. And even if the Su-57 was uniquely capable of adding new capability to what is a sustained tactical bombing campaign at this point, and the Su-57 is not uniquely capable of changing anything substantively, there are not enough of them. What we are witnessing is the political folly of Russian tactical aviation being thrown into an impossible situation to try and accomplish something in time for the elections in Russia. And it will result in their being crippled without the industrial capacity to rebuild questionable ability to replace crew. And they will find themselves much weaker down the road when it really matters, perhaps when Ukraine is able to mount another counteroffensive. So that was some thoughts that I shared with some friends on a back channel today. And I don't think that we should obsess too much over exact numbers in the social media spaces that so many of us inhabit and spend time in. It's tempting to expect the immediacy of things, to expect accurate information, but there is still such a thing as the fog of war. There is propaganda on both sides, but the essential truth is that something is happening here. And I think that when you look at what Ukraine is doing with its partners in building up that integrated air defense system, which will soon include Western fixed-wing fighters, for the Russians to be expecting their pilots to lob these weapons at the range that they're expected to against that defensive system the Ukrainians have, it's starting to look more and more like something coming close to a suicide mission. And if some of their pilots are refusing to fly, I think that it says a lot about what they believe about their cause, but it should not be surprising.
There's even talk that they've been possibly doing a little bit of sabotage because they're so afraid of flying these. And the generals are basically saying, "What are you afraid of? Get out there." It's important what you mentioned about these bombs have been improvised to these aircraft, very much like Ukraine have done, except probably not as well, because we have noted an awful lot of bombs just falling off aircraft and landing in neighbouring oblasts, which I'm sure is quite worrisome for the residents there, but they're still being sent out with these things. And it makes me wonder if there's, just a problem with the fitting.
Oh, there clearly is. There clearly is. And the Ukrainians have been integrating weapons that are off the shelf, provided by partners. They are not improvised weapons. They're just being adapted to aircraft types that have not operated them before. But I think they've probably had more success with it, although it does affect some of these factors, like the radar cross section of the aircraft. Maybe not so much, because those are, as I said, they're not improvised weapon. It's not a Cold War era slick bomb that has this very boxy, fairly large, almost as large as some of the bombs, kit attached to it. The JDAMs that the Ukrainians are receiving are much more streamlined. But there's other factors. I was reading some of them off a few minutes ago. I don't have to repeat them. But the bottom line is that you have a Russian tactical aviation that is being really thrown into the battle right now in a way that we haven't seen before. Clearly, at the political level, someone has decided that there is something being gained here. And again, I emphasize, these weapons are deadly. They are taking a toll on the Ukrainian side, notwithstanding their potential inaccuracy. They've got enough of them, and they've been able to scale up the production of the guidance and aerodynamic kits that they are a factor now and then they've probably played a very important role in some of the recent Russian gains that we've seen in places like Avdiivka. That will probably continue, and that's exactly why political leadership is probably looking at this right now as a capability that is it's gaining them something. It's to an extent working, but at a cost. And it seems very myopic right now that they're not considering what is this going to look like in a year, in a country that is maybe producing 6 to 8 is the best open source information that I have. Maybe 6 to 8 Su-34s being produced a year. That makes these losses, even if a few of them are incorrect, unsustainable. But again, really think it's a case of not missing the forest for the trees. Something is happening, and obsessing over the exact number and are there incorrect claims? Are there misleading claims? Of course there are. In wartime, there always is. You're going to see that, but something is happening.
Yeah, Latin, something definitely is happening because, of course, there hasn't been any air activity in eastern Ukraine today since that plane was shot down. Hey, do we have any information? Have you heard any information about whether or not any of these pilots in these shot down planes, the 15 in the last couple of weeks, are they surviving, or are they being killed or severely injured in these shoot downs?
No, in open source, we haven't seen anything on that information. The only thing I'll say is, from a technical point of view, most of these aircraft are equipped with very good ejection seats. The Soviets/Russians make very good ejection seats. K-36, the standard model that you see on these aircraft, is a very effective 0-0 ejection seat. So they have that going for them. Other than that, we'd have to wait and see if there's any images like some of the we had seen some of those images early in the war, didn't we? Early in 2022, in the full scale invasion, of pilots being captured. But a lot of that was low level work, and it kind of depends on what system takes the aircraft down. If it's a larger, long range missile, that's more of a potential for catastrophic damage to the aircraft and injury to the crew. So that's a factor. But so far, we haven't seen any evidence of crews being captured, or if they are being rescued or come down in occupied territory, then okay, they successfully eject. But you typically would, there would be videos. We've seen videos of aircraft coming down. We haven't seen
I haven't seen any
parachutes.
shoots.
Yeah.
And yeah, given what you just said about the flight profile of those things when they have to release, wow, if they have to get up between 10 and 15,000 feet and still flare the way that they do like the short range rockets that we've seen off the Su-24s and Mil-8 helicopters, if they're doing that high altitude flare like that, they're going to have a radar cross section the size of Texas, aren't they?
Okay, so the flight profile you're talking about, where they pitch up, I haven't seen any evidence that they're doing that with the glide bombs, at least from the videos that the Russians have been releasing. The flight, the way that they release these weapons, the way they've shown us, is very level, is extremely level flight at a constant cruising speed, and they literally just release them. It looks very similar to the way they would release like in a carpet bombing campaign. They just release a free fall bomb. The aircraft isn't doing anything; just the weapon just disengages, and then you see them gliding off as the wings deploy on these weapons, and then the aircraft does turn away, obviously, because it's facing defenses. But yes, like you said, they're doing it at altitude. They may have the capability, or maybe thinking about or working on the possibility of toss bombing some of these weapons, which I imagine is how the Ukrainians have been delivering JDAM. And that looks a lot more like that rocket lofting profile, where they would fly at low level to avoid or minimize their exposure to defenses, and then pitch up. And what they're doing is as they pitch up at high speed, they release the weapon, it gets tossed forward. They may be doing that, but I haven't seen any evidence of them doing that. That would also severely affect the range of the weapon. So I don't think it would affect accuracy too much. My guess, anyways. But yeah, the profile that I've seen really would expose them, because let's say it's about 30, 40 kilometers. That's not nearly enough for the especially the medium and longer range systems that the Ukrainians have. And if they're getting targeting data from NATO, especially, at least to some extent, they probably are. That's not a good situation for the launch aircraft. I mean, in other words, nothing that's happening here is unbelievable. It's not unbelievable that they should be shooting down, that there should be an increase. I'm not talking about specific numbers. There's no point arguing about those, but that there is a significant uptick in Russian aircraft losses, given the tactics and the aircraft weapon combination that they're really leaning heavily on right now. That is not a surprise. It should not be a surprise to anybody. By the way, on the rocket lofting front, there is a video circulating as of this morning of an Su-24, which is kind of Ukrainian Su-24, which is interesting, launching some sort of a weapon in a lofting type attack, low level pitch up. A lot of people are jumping to conclusions that it could be one of the French guided weapons that have been provided. That is possible. That is entirely possible. Two very distinct weapons. You can see the contrail of two weapons leaving the aircraft, then the aircraft turns away. So it is two weapons. It is not like a rocket pod that has multiple smaller rockets. That leaves a very different trail. But I'd caution everybody not to jump on that yet, because it could be consistent as well with the Ukrainians as well as the Russians have a series of very large caliber unguided rockets that they've been using throughout the conflict, typically not on an Su-24, but I'm waiting for better clarification on what that is. We know that the French have provided a series of guided weapons, and they should be used at some point, but I'm not sure if this is it.
Thanks, Latin. So if the Su-34s are flying anywhere near 10,000 feet, 10,000 to 15,000 feet, they'd have to be well farther back than 40 kilometers, wouldn't they? Because the NASAMs, let alone the Patriots, but I think even the Avengers and some of the shorter range systems might even be able to make it if they were that high in the air, and you could see them over the, they're not over the horizon. So it seems to me that that's this is going to continue to be a problem with them. And who's making the calculation that what they're gaining through the loss of these planes is worth it? Because early in the war, they other than the first several days, the VKS got actually pretty cautious in how they were operating. What sort of pressure would you have to put on a pilot to have them fly into obviously serious harm's way here, to provide close air support when the air environment clearly isn't permissive at all? And I didn't know they were flying that high, because it seems to me that there'd be half a dozen different systems that Ukraine is employing in various areas that could get a plane 40 kilometers back at 10 to 15,000 feet.
Well, we had seen this type of Russian aircraft taken down over the Sea of Azov to the Black Sea as early in last year, like at least the middle of last year. So this seems to be an incremental. It's nothing new. It's just that there's more of it seemingly happening, and that just makes sense with the buildup. The Ukraine's integrated air defense system is evolving. It's getting all sorts of inputs from partner nations, so it's not a static thing. As far as the political, that's a political decision you're describing, Will. Is ultimately in dictatorships or democracies, the military are subject to civilian rule. And somebody in the Kremlin is making this decision ultimately. There's no question about that. As far as the bigger picture of, what is it that, the motivation in getting pilots to do this. Look, I'm going to share another historical example that I've shared before, and I think it's relevant. And I'm going to ask for uh, the understanding of our British friends in this space. I'm not here to discuss sovereignty of the Falkland Malvinas Island. I want to provide a historical comparison that I think helps us understand this in a conflict that I've studied quite a bit over the years. When the Argentine Air Force was tasked with attacking the British fleet, the British task force that had been sent south in 1982, these men understood very well that they were up against a task force that had pretty good surface-to-air missile coverage. There were some areas where it was deficient. That's another story, but they understood the threat, and they were flying relatively primitive aircraft, but they threw themselves into the battle. I've heard numerous interviews with these men. They believed in their cause, and when they were given the order to go and do what you can to cripple that British fleet, they did it, knowing that many of them would not return. But they believed in their cause, and that's the bottom line. Again, I'm not arguing for the sovereignty thing. I'm just saying that this group of men who had been trained all their life to do this job at great expense to their nation, when the moment came, and this is their words because I've heard these interviews many times, said that this was their moment. They had to do what they had been trained to do. If a pilot is unwilling to do that, if these reports that we're seeing from this Telegram channel, anyways, if there's any truth to them, then that simply means that there are pilots who don't fundamentally believe in their cause. If you do, you're willing to give your life for it. Period. I mean, that's generally how conflict works. So I think that's pretty basic.
Yeah, and that's an interesting example. I won't say an analogy because, of course, those Argentinian pilots would have clearly thought they were fighting for their homeland, essentially, for sovereignty over the Malvinas. But this situation, it would paint to me that in a high risk environment like this, if they told you you still had to fly in a very high risk environment like this, uh, people balking at doing that in significant numbers clearly shows that the Russian propaganda isn't really working through to their population of pilots anyway, because true believers are probably few and far between. If you really had to put people on the spot in Russia, I mean, we
Well,
see that on the ground, right? So it probably is
Will,
similar in the air.
Will, when the Soviet Air Force fighting in the Great Patriotic War against actual Nazis, when they threw themselves into the battle, they experienced huge losses. But they knew what was those men that flew those missions many years ago. They understood they were fighting actual Nazis who actually wanted to take their country and enslave their people. Um, in my opinion, they were heroes, notwithstanding that they were fighting for a brutal dictatorship. They were fighting fascism, and they made great sacrifices. I think deep down, these guys today, they know it's all bullshit.
Yeah, that's my sense too. I really don't think there's many, despite their ramping up of rhetoric. I don't get a sense that there's that many true believers in 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 Russia anymore, because the true believers uh, are all dead. I mean, the VDV, Spetsnaz, the 90% of all the troops that entered Russia at the beginning of the war included their very, very committed specialized units, and 90% of them are dead. So I'm not sure your contract soldier, even though they like the money, is going to be committed to the cause once they essentially are convinced that they're not going to live through it or have a serious risk of that. For every child, have you got a question on this?
Yes. It, uh, Dryfly, 10 to 15,000 feet it seems to be just a normal height for a private plane, a private propeller plane in mountainous terrain, and not a great height at all in a mountain region. Am I correct?
Sorry, for every child. Was that for me? I think I heard the question.
Yes.
50,000 feet, 50,000. Okay, the typical cruising altitude of a commercial airliner is like closer to 30. So 15 is just still a pretty modest altitude, but it's not low level. The Ukrainians have been able to avoid, for the most part, getting a lot of their aircraft shot down over the last year and a half by flying at very low altitude. Anybody who's seen the videos of Ukrainian aircraft consistently, right up until the one that was released today, shows that continued doctrine of flying at very low level. Anything over in this air defense environment, I would say anything over 1,500 feet, you're starting to, probably even lower. You're really starting to expose yourself, because there are layers to that integrated air defense system. From the infantryman holding a shoulder-mounted surface-to-air missile, infrared guided surface-to-air missile, short range, all the way to the Patriots, the S-400s, S-300s. So anything below that very small envelope near the ground, you're already exposing yourself.
Thanks,
Well,
thanks,
they've
Latin.
definitely been exposing themselves recently. Sorry, I just wanted to thank you very much, Latin, indeed. Just wanted to point out, have you seen a number of videos, Will, where there's an awful lot of infantry riding on top of vehicles, tanks and stuff?
Yeah, for a while, until such time as I've seen multiple. This is different now, right? Because they're absolutely low on ammunition, so we see a lot more direct fire uh, uh, attacks on these. There's not as many mines. There tend to be a lot more and artillery rounds. There tend to be a lot more direct fire and RPG rounds, and this innovation that Nale brought up to us the other day, which was, hook a Claymore mine with its curved front hanging down on the bottom of an FPV drone and fly over the top of infantry and use it like a shrapnel bomb, much like those drop bear drones, those cardboard drones they set up to send that fragmentation cone below it to hit those IL-76s in Pskov. These crude Claymore hanging underneath an FPV drone works like that, and it looks like it works pretty good. 30 meters overhead. They look effective, and yes, I have seen a lot of people deciding that they no longer want to ride on a BTR very quickly when an FPV drone arrives or a Bradley starts opening up on it. It's normally the reason why it's a little troubling, Mockers, is I would hope. Well, I would have hoped that you'd have enough artillery ammunition so that the BTRs don't even get close enough for the Bradleys to open up on them directly. But that's essentially what we're seeing here today, or I am. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, 11 guys taken out of the single drone. Oh, and the tank as well, and whoever was driving the tank, no doubt. Yeah, just I've noticed these things keep happening. It's nice of them to bunch up like that, really, isn't it, for these attacks? Now then, there is a Russian insider reported that they can't have breakfast in peace in Simferopol because strikes hit Crimea yesterday in Simferopol, Sevastopol, and Belbek. A fighter jet reportedly, and 3 Ka-52s were said to have been destroyed. And then they complained that last night there were a lot of drone hits around Fedosia area as well. And it just what they're saying there, drone hits, as in not shot down. It seems to me that the Russians didn't shoot down all 38 after all. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, let's go to the video. Yeah, that shoot down over Fedosia particularly. If the shoot down is that low over your facility, it's essentially going to be similar to a strike.
Slava
Yeah,
Ukraini.
absolutely.
Hello, Slava. How are you,
Slava.
Werner?
Героям слава.
Hello, Slava.
Okay. I'm going to just mute you for a minute because I could hear your TV. So, Russian authorities have come out and said about what's been happening in Ingushetia. Well, and they've said there were just 6 suspected Islamic State group fighters. Now, there's been a query as to whether this was actually just 6 people, because in some of the video, it's it's quite obvious that the FSB officers there are pretty much stuck in corners. They can't seem to get any sort of, leverage on the situation. And as a result, they started actually shelling and using grenade launchers because, this is appropriate in a residential area. Apparently, they also hit some residential buildings nearby, which I'm sure pleased the local residents greatly. And these are apparently Ingush people who are, they consider themselves a part of the Republic of Ingushetia. They are not necessarily IS fighters, as the FSB have made out, but also that they were eventually cornered in a building in the town of Karabulak and neutralized according to Russia's anti-terrorism committee. But this fight went on for hours. I mean, hours, at least 7 hours. I'm sure it's totally unrelated to any other thing that's going on in the world these days, but it is nice to see these people sort of standing up for themselves, isn't it?
Well, I mean, so this attack, this operation in Ingushetia, if you saw the lengthy videos of these things and would have seen how many munitions were going off on multiple sides of that building. Wow, an indiscriminate level of force used in an apartment complex that I'm certain they didn't warn everybody to get out, because they did kill at least one bystander as well. So this is typical of the response of Russia ever since, frankly, ever since the Beslan massacre occurred, when they were going to get those people they considered terrorists, and they didn't care how many civilians got killed at the same time. Same time with the Moscow theater issue. Same thing with the fact that they bombed their own buildings. FSB is credibly indicated to have been set bombs in its own properties in Russia to finger the Chechens for it as a provocation to start the second round of the war under Putin. So wow, I mean, the amount of munitions that they use in that and the amount of firing that's going on there would have done all kinds of damage to a number of apartments around there. And I mean, imagine for a second if the British anti-terrorism police, got into a housing complex somewhere and did that level of damage inside Britain or inside Australia or anywhere. It's incomprehensible to think that your police force would act with that level of violence without really clearing the area out first. And this looked like a sneak up on them and capture these terrorists, that quote unquote, I'll call them terrorist operation.
Ioana.
Thank you, Marcus. So yeah, there
Слава
were just
Україні.
Herem Slava. So there weren't just six persons. They killed six persons. They declared a full anti-terrorist campaign, and as you said, it went on for hours. Most of the night, they closed the code, the anti-terrorist code, in the morning. They said that they killed those six, whatever terrorists, and of course they were Muslim. Remember, the discussion yesterday about the other. Of course, they were Muslim. They were terrorists. They were part of ISIS or ISIS, whatever. So yeah. But I'm wondering who's the terrorist, because Russia killed yesterday 10 people in Odessa, and 3 children in their sleep. Timothy, Mark, and I don't know the name of the other kid. Not kid, a baby, 8 months, years old. So who's the terrorist here? Who's the terrorist? And it's such a pity for Odessa, because so many tragedies happen there. And Russia is killing children in their sleep, and we don't have the courage to call Russia a terrorist state.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's the same language they used in Chechnya and in Ingushetia before. Yeah, these are the places, Chechnya, Ingushetia, Georgia. Georgia's not part of the country, but these are the places that have a historical national identity. Tatarstan, Bashkortostan, that those are the places that, as this war goes on and gets worse and worse, and the shine comes off Putin, that you'll see people willing to stand up and take him on. I would expect that it will, if there is going to be any of that, it's going to be in places like Chechnya, which still has a national identity. I realize he has a puppet overlord in there that has lots of firepower and everything like that, but he could be seen as the emperor without clothes pretty quickly as well, and hopefully. But Ingushetia is another place that was heavily repressed. 2008, I think. But yeah, Chechnya and particularly under Dudayev really could have had a go on its own, and I would expect to see multiple of these places, if any, if Russia does end up breaking up as part of the end of this war or after the end of this war. Those are the places you'd look to see it happen. If it's going to happen in I'll call it a secular sense, like not a racial group or not a religious group or whatever like that would form a national identity. I would look out in places like Novosibirsk that have a history of sort of non-religious, non-cultural sort of streak of independence and protests that's come up before too. You see, there's a reason why the big protests or the big demonstrations in Moscow around Navalny's death that are going on, and that is also good to see, right? To see that regardless of the size, that's carrying on for a number of days, and people are willing to demonstrate their independence, because the more days that goes on, the better. At this point, it really doesn't matter so much about the number of people participating. It's how long the activity can go on before Russia is forced to do real repressive action. And if they overstep that, right, because that's the sort of thing that could cause other reactions. Look at what happened in Iran when the religious police were going along doing what they were doing forever, uh, and regularly killing people. But then they beat that young girl to death over not wearing a headdress in prison, in captivity, and that set the country off. So you never know what's going to happen to cause something to set them off. But oftentimes it's overly repressive action on the part of the police or Oman or the Rosguardia, um, on one of these things, which is why I noticed that the Oman and Rosguardia were very careful to try to avoid a confrontational situation. They did take some people into custody the other day, but they did it a lot more quietly and less riot policey than they often do in the recent past, even. So I think they're worried about it, and frankly, I think they should worry about it because when this war is over, uh, Georgia will be done with any Russian influence inside its country. I hope Transnistria gets absorbed back into the regular daily life in Moldova, and some of these southern provinces of Russia who've taken this war particularly hard. And I'd go right to Tuva, where Shoigu's from. The Tuvans are one of the biggest contributors in bodies to this thing after Buryatia, and they also have a distinct culture from the past that makes it incomprehensible that Shoigu would sit there and let that many people from his home region get sucked up into the thing. But I suppose there's historical precedent for that too, because Khrushchev wasn't very kind to his own people back in Ukraine either. But we'll see. We'll see. It's yeah. It looks like overkill to do that one, to deal with 6 people, and that's the sort of thing. If they do that uh, at the wrong time for the wrong reason, it's hard to pick out what's going to set people off. But over repressive policing will definitely do it in some cases.
Yeah, they upset the locals though, I think, rather a lot. A terrifying situation, really.
Well, look at how
Um,
close to the edge they were in Bashkortostan in that unexpectedly large 10,000 person uh, demonstration that showed up when they sentenced Fail Asinov to 5 years. They weren't expecting a big day at court that day, but that could have gotten out of hand relatively easily, um, and they just barely maintained control there by being quite assertive, right? By being anybody who started anything that day, that they rushed them with the riot police and shields and were being pretty repressive that day. And that's what Rosguardia normally does, right? They normally turn on the repression early to cow everybody else who's around. And not saying I'm not saying that you have to be that repressive, but that's the sort of assertive action that, frankly, the Polish police ought to be doing when somebody is clearly breaking the law. It's a different situation contextually, but a high level of intimidation while you're policing in situations like that oftentimes means you don't have to do any actual physical, uh, you know, clearing of the square that could injure people.
right, I've got some other bits and bobs. Sorry, I seem to be losing my voice today for some reason. Now, this has been laid out as being utterly shocking. except it's not shocking, is it? Because I remember saying this at the time. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about when Russians took flight from mobilization and began to, refugee themselves all over the world. Believe it or not, the Russians deliberately left their borders open at that time in order to be able to also send spies with them. Now, shock upon shock, some of the people that came and sought refuge in European countries were actually spies and infiltrators and provocateurs. I know. I'm so very shocked as well. Not. Anyway, so the Wall Street Journal writes, citing European officials, this is how the Russian president decided to join the ranks of agents after many Russian diplomats were sent back to the Russian forces. So now Russian agents are becoming more daring and inventive in suppressing what we're doing abroad. They may indeed be behind high-profile murders of Russian defectors, including the known pilot Maxim Kuzminov, who hijacked the Russian Armed Forces helicopter and was shot dead and run over. He was. They made absolutely sure he was dead. They shot him quite a fair few times and then ran him over with a car, just to be sure. So I have a feeling that was a bit of a message. And he was found dead in Spain in mid-February. The material also mentions other mysterious deaths of Russians who have died on 3 different continents since the beginning of the full-scale Russian war against Ukraine. Russian businessmen were found hanged in London, drowned in Puerto Rico. Indeed. A United Russia deputy fell from the roof of an Indian hotel. Also, I'd like to note that this was only a 2-story building. So, perhaps he fell from the roof while being deaded. Because, there's a place near me, right? And unfortunately, people do jump off it from time to time. And it's like 6 or 7 stories. And the issue there is, a lot of the time, they're very broken, but they're not dead. So a 2-story building doesn't seem like a good choice, put it that way. Sorry for that mental image. And a 46-year-old deputy minister of science died in an unexplained illness during a flight from Cuba. It is noted there is no direct evidence that the Kremlin is behind all these incidents, but at the same time, there is a published list of 51 names entitled Suspicious Deaths of Russian Businessmen from 2022 to 2024, which you would think might draw a little bit of more attention than it is doing. And also, well, just a couple of things about people infiltrating countries and, look what's going on the border with Poland right now. I'm quite sure none of those people were involved in, moving out of Russia during that time period. Pretty sure none of them were involved in that at all. I bet you some of them could be found. Who was next? Was it Bull Terrier?
Yeah, hi, Mockers and Will.
For every child was Bull Terrier. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, if it's every child, fine.
Sorry, I'm just causing chaos. For every child, go ahead.
If is that article you're quoting at your fingertips? Because it seems like something I need to have in my file, but not if it involves any work at all. I'm opposed to asking co-hosts to do an ounce of work for me.
She's probably checking. Bull Terrier, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Will and Mockers, and thanks for your hard work. You know, everybody, please reach with space and the fundraiser. So I just noticed the Reuters report that the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan had made a comment. Let me, excuse me, let me just read it out. So Turkey hopes talks for a ceasefire in Ukraine will start soon, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said on Sunday at the end of a diplomatic forum in the city of Antalya. And quote, on the issue of Ukraine, our view is that both sides have reached the limits of what they can get by war. We think it's time to start a dialogue for a ceasefire, Fidan said. So I just wondered if you had any comments on that.
That tells me a few things, Bull Terrier. How desperate are Russia that they've admitted that they've come to an impasse there. They have no more to give. And they're saying that the same is for Ukraine. Well, only if Ukraine receives, no additional assistance. But even then, you know what's going to happen, don't you? Little phrase that I've picked up somewhere, that even if there's an 11-year-old child with a plastic butter knife, Russia will experience some sort of, resistance. And because Ukrainians are Ukrainians and they're not Russians. And that's really just how it is. So, they have no idea, do they? They think Ukraine's just going to go, oh, okay, then things are tough. No problem. We'll just, go on then. We'll just give up where we are. And one or two people might feel like that. Yeah, I'll be honest. But it's never going to happen, is it? So, I think that it is almost, it's an admission that we're really struggling now. And we've got to a kind of a point where we're really struggling. And you can see that they have, because of how much they've ramped up the sort of, fifth column approach all over, where they've literally blocked the Polish border completely right now. And that isn't Polish farmers. That's Russia absolutely wetting their pants. Bull Terrier?
Yeah, I was really shocked by Fidan's statement, actually. So anyway, Oana, please go ahead.
Yeah, so totally agree with Mockers, but I wanted to bring some more information to the context. Let's not forget that, propaganda wars and misinformation and disinformation is not just direct communication from the Russians. It's not just newspapers, it's not just social media, but it's also diplomatic communication, and they are using this. We know that there are several countries that just kept contact with the Russians, so are willing to listen to the Russian side. We know about China. Turkey is one of them. And Erdogan, he believes he's a great negotiator, and he just tries to involve himself in almost everything that there is to negotiate. So it doesn't surprise me that he is proposing again negotiations. In the last few weeks or so, we have seen several pushes for negotiations. And several claims that this conflict has gone long enough and it's just the time to negotiate, and so on and so forth. And Russia says that they are open to negotiate, but in the same time they are bombing civilian buildings almost every night and every day, and bombing also Kharkiv and Sumy and Kherson and whatever else they can bomb. So they are very open to negotiations, but they keep killing civilians in Ukraine. And also they call the peace formula proposed by Ukraine the fruit of a sick imagination. These are the words of Sergei Lavrov. And he says, like always, they have to, the new negotiation has to take into account what else the reality on the ground. And for them, reality is the sham referenda that they did, and annexing Ukrainian territories without even giving borders. So they annexed 4 regions, and they say this is Russian ground. This is really Russian ground. But they left the borders of those regions not really clear. They left them kind of vague because they don't really know what they can cover there. So for them, for the Russians, negotiations is Ukraine giving up that territory. And we know that this is not the way. This is not how you do, negotiations in 21st century. Everybody should respect international borders. It's strangely interesting because a few days ago, Erdogan stated that Ukraine should regain its territorial integrity. And it's also curious because China, in fact, said the same thing, but still in their proposed negotiations and in their proposed plans, it's kind of vague again about this territorial integrity. So yeah, and also there is another wave of diplomatic misinformation and diplomatic misleading, and I've seen this the other week, both from the part of Switzerland and Austria. Some speeches from their representatives. So Austria and Switzerland are not in NATO. Switzerland is not in European Union. They are countries in the middle of Europe, very well protected by whatever neighbors they have. There is no chance of war in the foreseeable future, like hundreds years, for Austria and Switzerland. So they feel well. They have a neutral status, and they feel that they are qualified to talk about negotiations about Ukraine. And what they are saying, both of them, they are saying almost the same thing. And that's why I'm believing that this is also a Russian operation. And we know that the Russians have influence in Austria, and they do have influence in Switzerland because money has influence in Switzerland, and Switzerland is all about money. So what they are saying, why just take into account the Ukrainian peace plans? There are other peace plans. China has a peace plan. BRICS have a peace plan. Why don't we just focus on those and negotiate? So BRICS is dissolving right now, and it's not even a thing. If it was, it's dissolving, but I don't think it's even a thing. And China, well, the peace plan from China, as I said, is very, very vague. But again, this is a Russian operation. And Russia is speaking through the voices of this representative of different countries. And they want to freeze the conflict and they want negotiations because they know that what they are doing is unsustainable and they just grab this. And I will say again what I've said this morning. This is kind of a Romanian take into how Russia operates. I talked this morning with Diana, but I'd say it again because it's exactly that. Russia is the kind of neighbor that moves its fence half into your garden and then cries that you occupied the other half. And you know for sure that when you built the house, the Russian was on the other side of the village. So this is Russia. They are escalating to de-escalate them. They are grabbing something and they hope to remain with something. So yeah, about Turkey talking about this, yeah, it's normal. It's the same as usual. They also talk about resuming the grain deal. Who needs the grain deal now, really? 1,000 ships have used the Black Sea corridor.
Yeah. Hey, Mockers, the other thing that I forgot to bring up when you were talking about the with Bolteri about the Turkish proposal, for coming to a peace deal is the other thing I would look out for in the next week or so is Russia definitely trying to, as they try to push everywhere and get as much territory as they can, really start pushing for a freeze in place sort of settlement, because it would appear that there are no more artillery shells flowing from North Korea. Not only have the vessel transfers stopped about a week ago, the satellite analysis would show that there is nothing flowing by rail either. and Iran has not resumed any shipments of artillery. They sure sent drones, but they haven't sent any artillery shells that we can see since they first provided a whole bunch way back when Bakhmut time was going on, I think. So Russia could very well be looking at some upcoming artillery shell thirst themselves. And wouldn't it be poetic justice if the ammunition supply got turned back on for Ukraine just about the time Russia finishes shooting everything that it's gotten, or depleting enough that it's going to face a slowdown in its usage as well? That would be really poetic justice. Now I see Mockers has swapped out, so I'm assuming we're going to have a pop-up from Tracy or Christopher, one of those two, or both of those two. We'll see.
Morning, William, or in your case, good evening.
Yes. Good morning to you, Christopher. How is every little thing in the greater New York, New Jersey area?
It's good. It's about 9 or 10 outside and sunny, and it
There you go.
poured yesterday. Cats and dogs. Now it's not. So it's good. It's good for a stroll around the complex. You know, thanks for your contributions. I was sort of listening this morning as I was napping, and you know, I it's a intractable problem. As Ioana said, we're not. We're really not. We really don't really need to be listening to what other people have to say about peace plans, because nothing is going to be at all relevant, because the only one that matters is Ukraine's. So that's, it's just really, I'm not sure why we're even bothering to entertain stuff, but I can understand the desire to get clicks and eyeballs. And if there was a different way to have for generating revenue for our news organizations that didn't involve pushing out the most nonsensical stuff and just verbatim repeating crap, and somebody coming out and saying, you know what, it's not raining, it's sunny outside while it's pouring on your head. I don't know. I guess that's my little frustration for the morning. I missed your rant, Will.
What? That's okay. That's okay, buddy. I always keep in my back pocket, because I'm used to people in a business sense repeatedly coming back and asking me questions that the answer is no to, right? So I keep the answer is never no, Christopher. The answer is yes, but. And so the yes, but that I keep in my pocket here is, isn't it time that we started negotiating peace? Yes, but Russia hasn't removed itself from Ukrainian territory yet. Once Russia does that, we can talk about virtually anything you'd like to talk about. But until such time as Russia has returned to the 1991 borders, then preconditions for having that chat are not set yet. But we'd be more than happy to participate in it when it occurs. That's that's because that is the basis of the 10-point peace plan that has been what's that been shopped around now at 3 different conferences, and up to 94 different countries, I think, have participated in that. So it's got a lot of validity. Marcus, you're off.
Hey, yeah, I'm off shortly. But before I go, I spotted something which was quite important to note. Audio and video calling is now available to everyone on this platform, and it is already set up in your direct message settings as on by default. So, folks, anyone can voice call you who's following you, I believe. Well, it's important to note that they can also see your IP address when they do. So it is important context for safety You need to go and turn this off. Users who wish to keep their IPs private must go into their direct message settings. So settings and privacy, direct messages, turn this off. I think that is important that everybody does that because, yeah, let's just say in these days of being, careful, just careful in general. I think it's important to do that. So there you go. That was my PSA before I
Let's-
drop off. Now I'm off.
And a good one. Prevent those 3 a.m. troll calls because they're not as nice as the. I don't mind getting called at 3 a.m. provided she's attractive, and most of them aren't. Hey, there's another PSA we got to do. Christopher, did you notice that we have snuck in and started another fundraiser for the 95th Air Assault Brigade, and I love this one. Because honestly, if in a perfect world, if I won my wish, MriyaReport would be an international arms dealer, and we'd raise money to buy pointy things and explodey things, because I would find it very cathartic to know that we were contributing directly to the untimely death of invaders inside Ukraine from Russia. But we're not doing that. But what we are doing, Tracy, I see you've joined us. What we are doing is raising funds for DJI Mavic 3 thermal drones. And we previously raised some thermal drones for another unit, but this is for the 13th Battalion of the 95th Air Assault Brigade. So I particularly like it when we get to provide these folks with equipment that they need in the military fighting units. I do. I mean, probably the most valuable thing we've ever done is contribute so that the lady that does the Orphans Feeding Foundation can get the kids back. That's probably the most valuable thing we're doing. And the better angels in me like to say, I wish we could do one of those every day. But the truth is, I'd rather buy stuff for guys that can use it to kill orcs. I'm sorry, I'm weak that way, but I do like it. So if you do have the odd dollar to throw in, please go to MriyaReport.org and provide that donation to us so that we can get the 95th Air Assault Brigade some more drones, some more thermal drones, so that they can see at night and find those sneaky little orcs that will be sneaking up on their positions, because they can't lay down lots and lots and lots of DPICM on them when they're well far away. But that will be coming soon. I think some of the artillery problems for Ukraine might be getting sorted out in the next week or so, as far as I understand it, from the Czech Republic has lined up some of that artillery ammunition to start arriving within a couple of weeks. So that's the PSA. I'm going to say hello to Tracy, and then we're going to go to Cleo. Good morning. For you, it would be good morning, I think. Cleo. Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I'm tired, but I am plodding along. Thank you for asking, Will, and thank you for the welcome. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
G'day, Cleo.
Hey, I just wanted to ask Mockers on the privacy setting. What was it after you go into privacy? Because I couldn't find it. I was looking for the word telephone, but I don't know if that was
it's
right.
audio and video button. I think it's a little slide button down in the second section, I think, of your settings. Just after you set who you can get direct messages from, there's another slide button there that you can pull over so it's not green. So
Thank
that video. Yeah, no worries, Cleo.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. Then thanks, thanks, Mockers, and good to see you, Tracy. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Cleo. So, Will, you are about to leave us then.
I think so. If the gentleman who runs the teleporter is ready to lift Christopher up, I will also drop back to speaker and then hang around for a little while before I get my beauty rest, because I'm homelier than a bag of warts, so I need my beauty rest. Not like some of you other folks. But I'll hang around for a little bit and see if there's anything else that you guys want to catch up with me about before I slip off.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Will. Hello, everybody. Christopher and I will be taking you away for the extended play version today. So as it's still quite earlier in the day than Christopher and I usually start, I'm not going to go down the whole list that I usually have for you because, it's not that long ago that much of it was covered. But I will go just very quickly over some of the details whilst Christopher gets up at the side of me, and then we will see where we would like to go. Now is a perfect opportunity for any of you to raise a topic related to Ukraine, of course, or bring your questions or comments, so think about coming up to the panel and doing that whilst Christopher and I swap over. We like to bring you all the news and headlines, as you know, some things to talk about, the occasional story, but of course we like to fit in conversation and time for conversation with you all as well. So it's Sunday afternoon. Come and have a chat with us and tell us what you would like to hear about. Bring us some questions. If we can't find the answers, if we don't know the answers, then we will find the answers somewhere, I'm sure, amongst the team that we have. We have lots of people, as you all pretty much know by now, in the background helping us out as well, finding out all that information that we cannot always find out. So feel free to come and join us and do that. And whilst Christopher joins us, I will quickly go over the morning's enemy losses for you. So we have 1160. I'll be better if I started off right, wouldn't it? 1160 eliminated invaders, 16 tanks, 28 APCs, 35 artillery systems, one aircraft, yes, that's on the list, the one aircraft, 14 UAVs, 65 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 3 special equipment. So lots of enemy attrition there. And your demining figures for today, no slowing down for the weekend. Today they have cleared 396 hectares of land and destroyed 358 explosive items. So there you are, that's your daily lives saved, at least in Ukraine today. And of course, in some parts, everybody here at MriyaReport helped to get some of those devices that these guys are using in the field to be able to get those explosive devices cleared, examined, neutralized, and jolly well out of the way and saving Ukrainian lives. Christopher, you are still waiting for elevation. You are the slow one today.
Well, it is Sunday. It is morning for some of us. Yeah, I guess so. Yep. Just waiting, twiddling my thumbs. Thumbs are twiddling. Back to you.
Thumbs are a twiddling. So looks like Bern Nestor is coming up to join us. So what have we missed from this morning about things going boom in, where is it, Crimea? What we heard about all these 38 drones, which of course is not true, Will. So did we have any more latest information on that? Maybe Will stepped away for a moment, just when I happened to call on him.
No, that's fine. I did for a second because my kitty wanted some sustenance because she's clearly starving to death. So yeah, the Fedosia strike. Yeah, the 38 drones all shot down. But if you see some of the video of that attack on Fedosia, one of the if that's an air defense strike on that missile coming in or the drone that's coming in very low, if it's that low and it blows up a drone, it's essentially like a strike anyway, because the thing is so low that all the debris is going to crash down onto what would have been the target anyway. So definitely some damage. Crimean Wind is actually saying that a vessel a vessel probably tied up alongside, loading or unloading fuel into that terminal, was hit. We haven't seen any confirmation of that, but that would be a logical strike to make, because that terminal, which is the largest in Crimea, if you could shut down the loading and unloading facilities there, then it would seriously put a crimp on the amount of fuel that Russia can move through Crimea, because they can't carry bulk tankers across that bridge ever since it was struck more than year and a half ago. So yeah, we're still waiting for some video or other battle damage assessment, because if that Fedosia terminal or a ship was hit loading, we'd expect to see a whole lot of fire and smoke and everything like that, and we haven't seen anything yet of battle damage assessment, other than the strikes we see on the video that are very low.
Thank you very much, Will. Go ahead, Cleo. Cleo?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my mic on. I was wondering where the video was of the strike on Fresonia, because I didn't see it in the nest.